Welcome into Cougar Tracks here on the KSL Sports YouTube. I am your BYU insider, Mitch Harper, for KSL Sports. Earlier today, I had the chance to go down to BYU football practice at the student-athlete building, and that's where we start things off in our top story of the day.
The top story of the day. The biggest story in the world of BYU sports right here on Cougar Tracks.
We are in the dog days of BYU football fall camp. Day 11 wrapped up on Tuesday, and the media had a chance to get an observation window at the student-athlete building. And I will say I thought it was a very noteworthy, insightful observation period, some of which very deep-cut players, and we'll get to some of those news and notes, but second and third team reps, also some first team snaps as well. And we actually got to see these offensive and defensive units put together some drives. We also saw special teams work as well. So I think there was some noteworthy tidbits to take away from that practice observation period. As I've said before here on the show, you don't have to watch much. Granted, I'd love the entire practice of days of old as a media member to watch the entire thing, but in the snippets, you can learn some valuable things that maybe carry over to a season. And once I got to the balcony at the student-athlete building, we were escorted by a sports information director assistant to the balcony. And immediately, what caught my attention, and no pun intended with caught, Reggie Frischnecht running with the first team offense. His stock continues to climb. Frischnecht playing some really good football, and he was someone that Bear Bachmeier targeted in that first snap that I saw on the balcony. Frischnecht came up with the catch. It was with that first team offense. Also, Roger Saliapaga, Walker Lions, they continue to be targeted quite a bit by Bear Bachmeier. I think those guys are going to have a lot of production. You can't just solely bank on those, but I think there's a lot of momentum building for some of these areas where there were some question marks coming into camp. Internally in the building, I think they felt pretty good. But still, I think that there's some positive momentum building in those wide receiver units. I think, though, the tight end spot is that area of strength, and they seem like a group that can be a real impactful unit when it comes to the receiving game and the passing attack for BYU, but also very capable blockers as well. As you heard in my conversation with Roger Saliapaga, he feels like he's made a lot of improvements as a blocking tight end. We know that he can be an inline receiver, inline tight end, but maybe he's had a little bit more versatility and more all-around package as a tight end since he arrived at BYU after a couple of seasons with the Oregon Ducks. And I think Walker Lions is steady, and he's a lot more athletic than I think people give him credit for. Also, in the defensive side, some of the deeper cuts that caught my attention, I've talked about this individual before, someone who I think is going to be climbing and on the rise. Ulavai Fetuli, he got a sack on Enoch Watson. It was whistled a sack. Obviously didn't hit him, but Enoch was kind of in traffic, and Ulavai Fetuli got that sack on that play to slow down the drive for the BYU offense. Also, Maverick McManus, number 50, defensive tackle, young developmental guy. I've talked about him before when looking at the defensive tackles. He moves really well for an interior defensive lineman. Again, very young, very raw, developing, kind of learning life as now a massive-bodied individual. He's huge, but he's still maintained that athleticism in the interior of the defensive line. Now, not saying he's going to be a first, second team guy. Might not even see him on the depth chart when week one rolls out, but I think that he's someone you continue to work with, continue to develop, and then down the road, and look, that road could be sooner than you think. You never know with attrition and injuries and what happens. But in this era of 5-5, and we'll talk more about that coming up a little bit later, the clock's ticking no matter what on eligibility. So the clock's going to expire at some point in the near future. Maybe that guy has a role in some capacity for BYU, but he just moved quite well in the interior. I thought it really caught my attention. Other kind of deep cut notables, Justice Braithwaite. He had a nice play defending tight end Ethan Wood. Nice coverage from Justice Braithwaite, who has occasionally made some plays. I don't look at him in that top 5 or 6 grouping at cornerback, but maybe that next tier of cornerbacks, and a young guy, true freshman, got some time in his BYU career. In the team portion of practice, saw a new face that was added to the roster. We had talked about him in the wide receiver summer school preview. He had committed to BYU a couple years ago and served a mission for the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. Asher Young, former Orem High wide receiver, he's officially on the roster, number 21. He had a few catches from Enoch Watson. There was a low ball from Watson. Asher still came up with the catch to come away with that. On the defensive line, I brought up Maverick McManus and his size. I also like the size and versatility of Devoe Tuataga. 6'6", 265 pound. He could be that traditional bull rusher like a Tyler Batty type, but he can also swing inside too, potentially. He's talented. And again, he got back from his mission in April, so a little bit shorter time to really ramp up for the season ahead. But remember the name Devoe Tuataga. I think next year at this time, we're talking about him as someone that's going to be a big piece on that defensive line in the future, but someone to watch down the road. The special teams, I think they were a highlight from Tuesday's practice. Matthias Dunn booted a 54-yard field goal to close out the practice on Tuesday. And how it was structured too, so it's a 54-yarder in the middle of the hash marks, and then all of the BYU football team, all the players, offense, defense, they all circled around the holder and Matthias Dunn, and the holder was Fuller Shirts and the long snapper. They circled around those guys to try to distract them, try to throw Matthias Dunn off. 54-yard field goal, trying to get it as loud as possible to throw him off. Even Viliami Pua was on one of his teammates' shoulders trying to distract him, waving something, and Dunn just boots it down the middle. I thought that was a great moment for Matthias. And people forget, too, Matthias Dunn, I remember this, you go back to 2023, when there were questions about replacing Jake Oldroyd, and people think it sounds crazy now considering how Will Ferrin became an absolute stud. But in that spring of 2023, those kickers that were in that competition, which included Matthias Dunn, they were missing kicks left and right. And the guy that hit the most, more often than not, was actually Matthias Dunn in the media observation periods. Now, BYU internally had more data points to point to Will Ferrin that he was going to be the guy, and they went with him, and good move. Will Ferrin was outstanding for BYU. But Matthias Dunn, throughout his BYU career, has shown some moments in practices and some media observation portions that he's got a leg. And there was a lot of confidence kind of building with him last year in fall camp. He was someone highlighted by Kalani Sitake as having a really productive fall camp a year ago. And I think that set the stage for him to kind of take ownership of this starting role this year. Now, Brody Laga, excellent leg too, out of Mountain Ridge. And I think Brody Laga is a fantastic, right there with Dunn. And if Dunn has struggles, I think you feel good that you got another leg to turn to, potentially. And so Brody Laga, he also made a kick as well from 37 yards. That went through the uprights, and Schumann was the holder for that one. So I feel like things are trending up for BYU's kicking game. It's still a question in games. It's different than practices. But early returns would say that this group should be okay with the specialist. Also, on the offensive side, I thought what caught my attention a little bit, Zach Yamauchi, Stanford transfer, getting some first-team run at right guard. I thought that was noteworthy. And look, you got Sonny Mocassini, you've got Kyle Safarachuk. Those are veteran guys in the interior. But I think it was a little bit of a, let's see what Yamauchi's got with that first-team offense, because we didn't see him much in spring as he was dealing with an injury, and that limited his availability. I think they're trying to give Yamauchi as big of a workload possible to get him ready for the upcoming season and have him right there in the mix to be contending right away for playing time. So I thought he moved quite well at that right guard spot, and Yamauchi's going to be someone to watch. He'll be a two-deep guy for sure. Could he kind of get into that conversation to be a starting guard? I think you look at the entire offensive line, and I caught up with Coach Woods, BYU offensive line coach, on Tuesday. You'll hear that conversation coming up tomorrow here on the program. And, Siwa Latu-Finau, Siosia Ua Latu-Finau, there's a real conversation. Could he be the left tackle for BYU? And then you have Paki Finau at guard, and then maybe that gives you your best five. Still would probably say Finau's going to be that left tackle, but I think they've got some versatility and some options potentially with that offensive line where they feel pretty good about how things are developing. TJ Woods feels really good about the top 6 and 7 guys. He spoke glowingly of Bot Molitalo and how he's continuing to progress, which is very exciting for BYU because, again, with Bot, former 4-star recruit, top 100 recruit, someone that still learning the offensive line position. Until his senior year of high school, he was playing defensive line, still learning this spot, but he does things that make him look like an NFL guy. He's going to be a special talent for BYU in the future. Also, Bear Bachmeier is going to be a special talent in the team portion. He had a nice quick pass to Walker Lyons. Again, Lyons, I think, continues to show up in media windows. I think he's been really good for BYU, and I think Bear was really solid today too, even though I will say I thought the defense just, from my perspective, just made bigger plays, bigger moments than the offense in the window that we saw. But again, Bear wasn't in all of those snaps. It was a lot of Enoch Watson as well. With the first team defense and first team offense, it's a lot of thuds, so you're not really hitting, none of that. There was a quick pass to JoJo Phillips, and immediately you saw that speed from Uluwavi, and he had the ability to slow down and not, make contact with JoJo Phillips, but it was a really nice play, and had that gone live, man, that's probably a heat-seeking missile coming in with a big hit and from Uluwave. It was a really nice play. Roger Saliapaga, going back to him, tight end transfer from Oregon, he had a really acrobatic grab, kind of in an open spot of the defense. It was a little bit of an overthrow, but he kind of leaned back, caught that thing, and showed that acrobatic nature in his body and to make difficult grabs. And then we saw it a few plays later, screen pass a little bit in front of him. That's getting nitpicky. He was right there to go make a play and get upfield, but he still stretches out, kind of shows the arm length, makes that catch, brings it in, secures it, and you get upfield just a little bit. So, I like what BYU's doing with Walker Lyons and Roger Saliapaga. I also like the entire tight end room, how that's developing. Aaron Roddick said this is probably the best tight end unit he's had since he's been the OC. I tend to agree. There's been some really good one-off tight ends. Bushman, Rex, they never really came together because that unfortunate injury to Bushman in 2020 in fall camp. But the whole depth of this tight end unit with Kean Need, who's got experience, Noah Moiaki, who's got experience, Jacob Nye, it's a good tight end room for BYU. That is a position of strength. I think Cougar fans should be excited about that because there's a great history for BYU football at the tight end position. That's always got to be an area of strength. I think it is in 2026 this year. Going to the running back position, speaking of once upon a time, Isaac Rex, his younger brother, Preston Rex, he got some snaps with the first team offense with Bear Bachmeier. I thought that was just noteworthy. And Aaron Roddick said in the media availability in the general session today that Preston Rex is going to play. So if you had to kind of look at it, you'd probably go with that depth chart. You'd say LJ Martin, clearly RB1. Sione Moa, RB2. Maybe Preston Rex, RB3, maybe. Maybe go Devon Ika, 4, 3, maybe. How about this guy, too? Journey Tonga. Now, he had a moment, and I like this kid. I put stock into, if you're a recruitable grade guy, and you find this dude through the cracks, that's a nice get. And we knew, talking about him on the RB summer preview show, that he was kind of in the mix. He committed to BYU back in January. So when people are saying this guy came out of left field, like, we've been tracking him since January. He committed to BYU last winter. This wasn't some out-of-nowhere guy. BYU had him on their boards for a while, and it's just a matter of, can they find the roster space and make this all work? And it worked out. I'll tell you, he had a play where he got into the open field. He was shifty, man, and he had some motion. He had some movement, and I was thinking, that looks nice. That looks really nice for a young freshman. And even Aaron Roderick, I think when he was saying that to the general media today, I think he was hinting at that play. Unfortunately for Journey, that shifty play out in space, can't remember the exact official yardage on that, but it got negated because it was a flag. The offensive line got called for a penalty. The offensive line had a couple penalties in this one. It wasn't the first team offensive line, obviously, with Journey Tonga out there. The third team offensive line also had a false start. Excuse me, the second team offensive line looked to be. Again, it's all subjective. It kind of changes. They get different groupings out there. So maybe in this particular day, it was the second team offensive line. There was a third down, and BYU's offense got a false start. The next play, the next snap, defense is hyped up on the sideline. Blue, wearing all the blue jerseys, they are hyped up. Jake Clifton, K-State transfer, I think made the play of the day during the media observation portion, hitting Terrence Serio with a nice hit, fired up the defensive sideline. They were revved up. And Clifton, what came away impressive with Clifton, just looking at his size here. So Clifton on my roster, I've got that BYU issues out. Number 31, he is 6'2", 230. I'll tell you, that dude moves well at 230. Watching him kind of closely and intently, because there's been a lot of buzz about Clifton, he moves incredibly well sideline to sideline. There was a chase down where Enoch Watson was kind of running near the sideline. Clifton was in pursuit, and he's going to make plays. He's going to be a good linebacker for BYU. That linebacker unit is an area of strength as well for this BYU football team. During practice, I was trying to keep tabs of some of the music that was playing. One in particular that really caught my attention, some Pop Smoke. That was blaring through the speakers. I was all about that. Give me some of that action. Kevin Doe, he had in coverage against JoJo Phillips, some nice defensive stand in the red zone, and he was in coverage right there against JoJo. And again, you hear the interview with Kevin Doe, young, raw talent. He's got a promising future. I look at him, and this is bold, but I look at Kevin Doe in the mold of Maury Bamba. And Maury Bamba's doing great things for the Jets as an undrafted free agent. I think Kevin Doe's got that career arc potentially. And look, that dude hasn't really played much at cornerback at all in games. But I think with his combination of size and speed, I think he is a one to watch down the road in the NFL. I think he'll find a way to get on an NFL roster. I really believe it, because I think it's starting to click too for him to actually make an impact on the field. So I thought there was another good moment for Kevin Doe in practice today. Also liked what Kendall Wall did. Remember my conversation with Coach Chad Kahahaha? I talked about Kendall Wall with Coach Chad. And Kendall Wall, former Mountain Ridge standout, is going to be a D-end, then D-tackle. Now he's kind of back to that D-end, outside linebacker role. Hit a really good tackle in the open field on Devon Ika in that backfield, which I thought was a good play from Kendall Wall. Saw Joe Brown, offensive lineman, second-team center snaps today. I thought that was of note, because when you look at Bruce Mitchell, yes, he's the all-American potential candidate at center, but who are some of the guys behind him? You've got Trevor Pay, you've got Joe Brown, you got Stronsman Giese. Stronsman Giese, man, he is a bodybuilder. Like, that dude should be in like a Mr. Universe contest. But Joe Brown, I think we sometimes forget a little bit about Joe. Remember when he came back and the coach were talking about, I thought this guy was on the Gold's Gym mission. And, you know, he suffered that devastating ACL injury. I really think that season he could have been definitely in the two deep his freshman year, maybe knocking on the door of being a starter. And recovering from that injury, it's taken some time, but I think he's kind of getting back to where he was before the injury. I think Joe Brown's doing some good things, can be an interior offensive lineman for BYU. Same can be said for Trevin Ostler, too. Heading into his senior season, Ostler, I think, is going to be kind of in that top 8 grouping for BYU at the offensive line position. And then some other quick hitters before we get out. Jordan Chris, breakup on Enoch Watson. Nice pass intended for Trey Roberts, but Jordan Chris right there. And I'm high on Chris. I think you got 5 cornerbacks for BYU right now that you feel really good about. Shmev, number 1. 2, Trey Alexander. 3, Javen Williams. And then it's 4A, 4B, Kevin Doe, Jordan Chris. And then I think there's a little bit of a gap after Chris. I think Chris is going to be a factor. He was really good in the Pop-Tarts Bowl prep. He was one of the risers that really benefited from those bowl practices that coaches talk about. It's the cliche, you can't underestimate the value of these bowl practices. I think that really helps someone like Jordan Chris to get that head start on 2026. Now they're benefiting from that because he looks like someone that could contribute in games this season. That's going to do it for the practice observations. Pretty in-depth. Hopefully you enjoyed that breakdown of day 11 of camp. Again, it's the dog days of camp, but you know me. I go deep in the weeds, man. I'm not just going surface level stuff with these practice observations. I want to give you the tidbits, the nuggets, Cougar Nation, so you can be the smartest fan at your office, wherever you may be. Also of note, BYU football taking Wednesday off. So after practice, they got on some team buses, headed up to Park City. They're going to have a golf outing. They're going to have also, for other guys that don't want to golf, you're going to go watch a movie. So they're going to have a little bit of a retreat in Park City and then get back at it on Thursday. Wednesday night will be the Cougar kickoff, and then it'll be the resumption of camp and that final stretch before they really shift into regular season prep and the weekly grind of a regular season. Let's take a break. Let's get to some BYU basketball news. 5-5 is heating up. Welcome back into Cougar Tracks here on the KSL Sports YouTube. So some big movement on the 5-5 pursuit of potential new faces. Familiar faces in college basketball, but new faces maybe on the BYU roster. One of the best follows on X these days, the Texas Trial Group. You know it's noteworthy, too, when head coach Kevin Young is following this account. And you know for a fact, I haven't talked to Kevin Young about this, so it's a little bit of speculation, but I got to think KY is just like, I'm having to follow this trial group on X to see where these lawsuits are at because, look, people that are in the NBA, in basketball, they're not well-versed in the courtroom, so we got to follow these accounts. The Texas Trial Group giving us all these updates on the TROs, and they shared all the clients that have a now temporary restraining order. 73 players. Our TROs, the favorite buzzword now in college sports, TROs. 73 guys now have a temporary restraining order to enter the portal, 1, and then move to another school, 2, with that 5th year of eligibility if they were in the class of 2022. And there's 73 players, some women's players, men's. And of note, 2 in particular stand out for BYU, potentially. Gabe Makeda, center for BYU the past couple years, and then Jackson Kohler, Michigan State big man. Honorable mention, all Big Ten selection last year. Massive. Jackson Kohler, wherever he goes, I think can make a dent and reshape the college basketball national picture, potentially. I've said it before. If BYU gets Kohler, BYU's the top 15 team in college basketball going into next season. I really believe that. But I think to just assume that might be a little bit premature. Kansas, Kentucky, Louisville, BYU, all in the mix there, reportedly, for Jackson Kohler. And Kohler shared on Instagram screen grab of him transferring on the IG story. So he's making it clear he's going portaling and he's going to be looking for a new landing spot. I think Kohler would be fantastic. I mean, You can look at the stats, 24% defensive rebound percentage rate. Outstanding. The guy had 11 games last year of more than 10 boards. He's really developed his offensive game. Only 5 3-point attempts his first 2 years at Michigan State. Worked his way into a feature role as an all Big Ten guy. And then he was his junior year, he was outstanding. 36% from three. Last year, 29%, but still. The ability to have a big man that can hit the three, that's a new wrinkle that Kevin Young hasn't played with in his first 2 years at BYU. And you think about the high-powered offenses that he can put together, his track record in the NBA, and potentially that's very intriguing when it comes to Jackson Kohler. It's interesting when you look at the other teams that have been reportedly in pursuit, and I'll be curious to see if there's other programs that jump in the mix for Kohler, because again, I think he can reshape the landscape for a team. Not only the perception going in, but really once you get to March, you slow build that thing in non-conference play, the exhibitions, and then once you get to conference play, you start to get your feet underneath you, and then that stretch run in March, you'd like to think, man, he's dialed in, he's playing his best basketball with that new group. That could change the game for someone. But you look at Kansas, Kentucky, and Louisville. I was looking at Louisville. Obina Akize. Remember him? Remember that name? The guy that took a visit to BYU? He's at the Ville. Flory Badunga. Remember him? Kansas Jayhawk, now with the Cardinals. They've also got a 7'5" dude from USC, Gabe Dines. They also just got Seth Trimble in this 5-5 bucket from North Carolina. Louisville is loaded next season. They've got to be top 10, top 8 next year. They've got to be really good. They might even be higher than that. That's a squad at Louisville. They want more. They want all the Infinity Stones on that team. Kansas, they've got 5 guys that are 6'10" and up. Kentucky's got Malachi Moreno, Frank Kepnang from Washington. I think college basketball hoop heads who like watching hoops out west, they know him. Reese Potter, who redshirted last year from Miami, Ohio. Njai from Senegal, this new guy that's added to the mix of those international waters for Mark Pope. He loves the international ranks. So they got 4 dudes over 7 feet at Kentucky. Like, in terms of opportunity and maybe minutes and just dominating the minutes potentially, like, it's just clear as day the best opportunity, I would think, is at BYU, and maybe fine-tuning the NBA angle as well. How much does that factor into the conversation for someone like Jackson Kohler, really any of those 5-5 guys? I think that's what's so interesting to me about the 5-5 conversation here. Because, look, maybe they're just looking to absolutely get as big of a payday as possible. And maybe that's what it is. Because the NBA kind of spoke to some of these guys, and it just wasn't in the cards, at least this year. So they're looking at it, maybe saying, I got to get the biggest payday possible. And maybe that's the move, and I wouldn't fault any of them, because this is big-time money, potentially, you would think. But at the same time, you got a coaching staff that's got the NBA background and NBA pedigree, and look what they've done with Richie Saunders. Look how, say what you will about AJ DeBonce. He got better at BYU. Yegor Dioman, he got better at BYU, and look what he's been doing in the NBA as a rookie. There are proof of concepts from all these different facets that Kevin Young can point to, and then you add on top of that the Devin Bookers, the Chris Pauls, the Kevin Durant's, and so on. Joel Embiid, you can go on and on. I just think that's really interesting for these 5-5 guys, because unlike a freshman, they know the end could be very near. Freshmen got all the stars in their eyes, and especially the ones that have been the highly rated guys. They've been told the world is just all in front of them. Whereas these 5-5 guys, like, this could be the last year you're making a big payday in basketball. And I don't think any of them want to go to a 9-5. And I think that's what's been fun for college basketball fans, is that now we're seeing guys want to stay in college basketball. It's so awesome to see. I love it. I think it's great for the sport, because you look around the Big 12 now. I had some questions about the Big 12 this year, but now you look at Texas Tech, they just added Darian Williams, Donovan Atwell, and they're familiar with that program. They run it back. Texas Tech's back. And once they get top in, whenever that happens, January, February, Tech's going to be awesome once again. Arizona picked up R.J. Godfrey from Clemson. Houston got Chendall Weaver, the guy that BYU's faced at TCU, then Texas. They're going to face him again now with Houston. A.J. Storr, he goes to UNLV, former Kansas Jayhawk. He's been pretty much everywhere. Wisconsin, the Johnnies. Where was he last year? Ole Miss? I mean, he's been everywhere. Now he's going to UNLV. BYU will face him in an exhibition. BYU still got 2 spots. And then you see pop up as well, Dallin Hall. He's going portaling for a 5th year, and I think Dallin Hall would be interesting too. Again, and that's where I kind of get into the conversation of, okay, they know maybe the end is near potentially. If you're Dallin Hall, does he say, you know what, I've been in the area this summer. I saw him at a Powder League game just watching as a fan, supporting some of his guys, some of his teammates, I think Tanner Toolson, some of those guys. And maybe BYU could be a spot. It'd be wild to see. But, I mean, he was part of the Kevin Young regime, that Sweet 16 team in year 1. It'd be great to see Dallin Hall potentially at BYU. You got 2 roster spots to work with. Let's see it happen. Let's see the resources really continue to blossom for BYU basketball. I think it'd be a great thing. I mean, this BYU team, this 5-5 wrinkle could be just an absolute stroke of genius if BYU can hit this out of the park, especially with Kohler. And I think Kaba Keita would be awesome too if they could. If not Kohler, I think Kaba Keita would be awesome too to run it back. It's just maybe a case of, does he fit this personnel? I feel like Kohler fits the makeup of the roster perfectly. And that's why, even though I love the retention side of it with Keita and how he's familiar and how KY operates and Chris Burgess, but I just think Kohler unlocks something that has maybe been missing a little bit for this BYU team. Either way, though, I just think that to go this long and to just not have an absolute bona fide college stud at center yet, and to maybe backdoor your way into getting one of these 5-5 guys. Look, KY told me at the Big 12 spring meetings, he is willing to wait till the bitter end. KY usually, he's got an intuition, man. Like, even though he'll tell you, I'm still learning college basketball, I'm learning this, he's got a good read on stuff, and I think this could work out quite well for BYU. But again, there's going to be a lot of competition for these guys because these teams, I mean, the ability to add someone like an honorable mention all Big Ten guy in August. I mean, we're talking fall semester is going to be taking place in a few weeks. This next week with the portal and these injunctions saying, hey, open up the portal for a week, this could be wild. So I'm here for it. Give me more portal season. Any portal season, I am here for it. Lock it in. Give me portal action all the time. And we'll follow all of it here on Cougar Tracks. That's going to do it for this edition of Cougar Tracks. I hope you enjoyed it. Make sure to subscribe to the show wherever you get your podcasts, and I'll talk to you next time here on Cougar Tracks, and it's powered by KSL Sports.